Let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be continuing on with our series on creative ways to best engage with your team, with today's focus being on that support element. So thinking about how we can best deliver that holistic support to your team as a manager. So today we are going to cover the current state of engagement. So reviewing some of those stats that we've been looking at a lot lately. We'll get into defining holistic support and then moving into what that actually looks like in action. So we'll have a few scenarios to walk through, and then we'll finish up with just a quick reminder on the different tools that you have available to you in TrueVelop. So with that, I just have a few stats here. So we'll go ahead and get started. So only 32% of employees are engaged today, and then this is actually down from 34% in 2021. So even though we have gotten out of a lot of the kind of stressors from the pandemic, there are still a lot of additional stressors that are driving some disengagement. And then with that too, the novelty of change in workplace is definitely worn off. So people are continuing to feel disengaged, and even more people are feeling engaged. 60% of workers feel emotionally detached at work, while 19% report feeling miserable. The 60% of feeling emotionally detached is obviously not a good thing, but nearly 1 in 5 people feeling miserable is definitely raising a lot of alarm bells for myself. That's definitely way higher than I would have thought. 78% of employees would work longer hours for an employer who they thought was empathetic. And this is going to start to take us into our conversation around holistic support, but people want to know that they're valued and that they are seen as people, and are willing to do more for organizations that they feel that sense of pride and connection to. 3/4 of workers want their organizations to make flexible work options permanent. I'm sure a lot of us are going through that process right now of thinking about what our 2023 workplace strategy is going to look like. And flexibility is definitely going to be a top ask for a lot of employees. Employees are 4 times more likely to feel engaged and 6 times more likely to have a positive sense of well-being when they think their employer cares about them. And lastly, 82% of employees say it's important that their organization see them as a whole person rather than simply an employee. So that all definitely plays into our conversation around holistic support. But before we move on, I'm just kind of curious to see, go ahead and use the reaction button and give a thumbs up if you're currently feeling engaged or inspired by your work. More? Okay, more than I would have thought. So that's good. At least our group here is feeling engaged and inspired. So it seems like a lot of us are in that smaller group that are actually feeling engaged. But of course, you're here, you're seeking ways to continue to grow. So that's not surprising, as somebody who would be disengaged is probably not seeking out some of those opportunities. So moving into what is holistic support. So just our quick definition here, this is from the APA. Holistic approach means to provide support that looks at the whole person. The support should consider an employee's physical, emotional, social, and spiritual well-being. Employees are not just valued for what they can contribute, but for who they are as a person. So just kind of tossing this back to the group. And again, you can come off mute or just toss this in the chat. But do you agree with this definition, or is there anything else that you would want to add to it? If you agree with this definition, go ahead and just toss a thumbs up with your reaction. Got the thumbs up there. Awesome. So before we move into our kind of scenarios here, obviously with holistic support, if it was easy, we would all be delivering it all the time. But what kind of barriers do you potentially see for why you might not be delivering holistic support all the time? Awesome. Signa also tossed in the chat that we should add that cultural perspective as well. And absolutely, again, we're considering that whole person and everything that's playing a role in their experience.
Hey, Juliana, I was thinking that because we don't have daily interactions with our team members like we did pre-COVID when everybody was kind of in the same place for the most part, not always, we may have to make sure we're giving ourselves the opportunities to check in and make sure that we are providing this type of support.
100%. Time is always going to be the biggest barrier for anything. But especially for being able to have those conversations, being able to have that kind of continuous, regular open door where they know that you're going to have that check-in is helpful for creating a level of trust there.
This is Carolyn. I think it's just, I think I need a better understanding of what kind of support we would give socially, spiritually, some of these, because I think you can enter into conversations that can be dangerous.
Oh, of course. Yeah. We'll have a few scenarios. And so hopefully that'll help to clear that up of just kind of what that holistic support looks like. But the biggest piece to just keep in mind is treating them as a human being. So not always just coming back to, did you get your job done? What are you working on? Instead, keeping in mind too, what else could be playing a factor into that piece. And again, we'll go through a few of those scenarios there. Anybody else have any potential barriers they think might play a role here? And going back to Carolyn's point, there's also the actual barrier that you do need to put up just to, make sure that we're all safe there, is that this isn't going too personal. That's not what holistic support is about. It's just, keeping in mind that they're a person, but that doesn't mean that we need to get personal and share everything about our lives. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move into the scenarios here. So for our first scenario, each of these are just kind of talk about something that you might be seeing in the workplace, and then having our group kind of talk about what would be your first step here. So one of your direct reports has been showing signs of disengagement. They're not as enthusiastic as they usually are. Their quality of work's been declining, and they haven't been initiating conversations with you. What would your first step be to re-engage them?
I would say just, check in, do a, kind of a temperature check with them, ask them if they feel like, they have everything they need to be able to do what they need to do. Are there any barriers? Just show them that you care.
Definitely. Like you said, just showing that you've noticed is a big piece, and saying, hey, just want to do that quick temperature check. It keeps the judgment out of it, but also gives them the space to talk about what's going on. Anybody else have an idea for how they might try to engage this employee?
I agree. The first step is just to ask.
Awesome.
I would say that if you're having frequent one-on-ones with your employees, that you're already setting the stage for, hopefully that they would feel comfortable talking to you about a variety of things. So it wouldn't be an unusual thing to be sitting down and having that kind of conversation.
Definitely. And you bring up a great point of having that kind of foundational level of trust. You can have all the check-ins in the world, but if that kind of relationship isn't there, it's going to be hard for them to open up and actually talk about what might be driving that disengagement, if that trust isn't there. So making sure that we're opening up the floor, doing any modeling that might need to take place there, just to help lay that foundation there. but definitely having those regular check-ins is going to help to build that relationship, but just making sure that they're productive and meaningful as well. Awesome. For our second scenario here, the team is currently focused on a major project. One of your direct reports has just taken a leave of absence, so the rest of your team is trying to make up for the new gap. They are working late and working harder than ever before. What is your first step to supporting your team?
Wow, this was a good one, Juliana. I think that once again, this starts with a conversation, explaining, what's happening, where we are, and certainly showing your dedication to helping them get through this in any way that you can, whether it's even picking up some of that slack yourself.
Absolutely. A great example of modeling. And again, like we've been talking about with that level of trust, you got to be willing to do it yourself. So I think that's a great kind of first step there too, is just seeing what people need and then following up on that.
I think recognition and reward is really important here.
Definitely. Yep. If people are working harder, working late, they want to know that that's being seen and appreciated. It's so tough to be going above and beyond and to not have that be recognized. It just feels kind of like, what's the point there? So definitely. Jeff tossed in the chat, servant leadership. Absolutely. Anybody else? Awesome. All right. For our third scenario here, you have a new hire joining your team next week. During the pandemic, they had stepped away from work to care for their family, so this will be a bit of a transition for them back to work. What's going to be your first step to ensure acclimation?
For this one, are they coming back to the company they were at before, or they're joining a new company?
Either.
Or
I'm curious, Meryl, how would that change for you, knowing one or the other?
yeah, well, I think I was reading it as, do they need to be re-welcomed and refreshed to things, or do they need to start from baseline of zero of here's how we do things, and which I think is more of a typical onboarding process. And either one is hard, but they're different. I think Alicia would say that it starts with a conversation, which is a good starting place.
Everything starts with a conversation.
Yeah.
Well, and I think when you have it, you're really going to want to, find out where that person's head is at. Being out of the workforce over a period of time can leave people feeling a little unsure of their own capabilities. They don't know if they've missed out on, technology jumps, things like that. So that conversation, I would think, would be really all about finding out where they are in their comfort level, because, they could be just like ready to get back to work. They've been stuck in that house for 2 years and oh my goodness, they're just going to tear it up. Or, they could be a little hesitant. So the conversation's going to be the first place.
Excellent.
Juliana, the thing that comes to mind to me is I think about, let's say I was someone that was in incredibly good shape and I went to the gym regularly. And for whatever reason, I took a couple years off and I go back to the gym. More than likely, I probably cannot immediately jump into that same routine I was doing 2 years ago.
Right.
And so I would probably want to pace myself. I would probably want to have someone that's been around, maybe show me, hey, here are some new things. Here are some new exercises, some new equipment, or whatever. This is how it works. And I would probably put that person on some type of a pace that would allow them to, ease back into it, to say, hey, look, let's get you to a point within 30, 60 days, whatever it might be, where you're at that clip where you were before you decided to take some time off. And I think, you'd have to set that real expectation. As the person coming back, I would want to feel that I have that support,
Right.
because it could be very difficult to immediately just jump back into everything, and could easily become overwhelmed and become sore to the point where I'm not sure I'm liking this or what have you.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. The pace piece is going to be really important, like you said. And to Alicia's point too, if they're coming out super excited and then all of a sudden they have a few obstacles that they weren't expecting, we want to be able to be there to help get them back on track and remind them that, hey, this is a ramp up period. We've got time. Absolutely. Awesome. I'll go ahead. Oh, and Tim added in the chat here, assign a buddy coworker to partner with them on any new learnings or updates. 100%, giving them somebody who is there, knows the ropes, is kind of that built-in support in addition to the support that you're able to offer, is always a good way to get them socially acclimated and comfortable in their role. Awesome. Moving into our fourth scenario here. This is probably going to be a little similar to our second one. This team member has been going above and beyond. They're so excited about the work that they're doing and have shown initiative and ambition to grow. What do you want to do to celebrate this, and how will you continue to support their development?
On the develop side of things, public recognition would be a great way to start. And then having a one-on-one, talk about what skills they want to develop, what opportunities they're looking for.
Definitely. Always going to push the recognition wall.
Yeah, recognition well all the way. But I think just continuing to use whatever model your company uses, whether it's grow model or something else, to really use your one-on-ones to document those milestones, to keep moving this person forward, to keep putting those goals out in front of the person so that they continue to be challenged and excited.
Definitely.
I know when I'm having my one-on-ones, I always ask them what next steps are. So surprisingly, sometimes that changes. But often I will pull out a job description, the job that they're trying to achieve, and go over the job description to see where they are currently, what additional training they need. And it's relationships are 50-50, right? So it's up to me to try to help them get there. And so
Nice.
when they're showing initiative and ambition to grow, it's the perfect time to pull that out.
Definitely. And again, it's that feeling seen and valued, and then knowing that your organization is investing in your development as well. Like you said, it's 50-50. So when they are going above and beyond, making sure that we're recognizing that and continuing to set them up for success.
I also think as a peer, if I've seen someone be successful, anytime my manager, I'm talking to them, they might encourage me, hey, you might want to visit with Merle. She's knocking it out of the park right now. And so I think from a peer perspective, when your peers reach out to you and say, hey, you're having some great success, can I just spend 20 minutes with you? And I'd love to hear what you're doing. And that the concept of being a peer mentor to your colleagues and people reaching out to you, kind of gives you, while you're not their manager, it puts you into a leadership position, And I think it boosts your morale and helps you feel good about the things that you're doing when your peers and colleagues are looking to you for advice and insights as to what's helping you be successful.
Definitely. And thank you, Jeff, for tying it back to last month's Lunch and Learn. This is definitely somebody who would be a great candidate for being a mentor and celebrating the work that they've done, figuring out what's been working, and using that to share with the rest of your team is a great way to do that recognition piece as well. Awesome. Moving into our last scenario here. So one of your direct reports was recently let go. What is your first step in supporting your team? Thank you, Meryl, for tossing the Lunch and Learn in the chat.
But I think sometimes it depends on, was this a layoff, which is always very, very frightening to team members, or was it for another reason? Now, we certainly don't want to get into sharing the reasons that, people are released. However, I think there's a different tact to take in both of those scenarios.
And I left it big for a reason, because I did kind of want to see what people would initially see it as. But like you said, there's going to be some different tact that goes into it depending on the scenario.
Yeah, I think a lot of times a closely knit team, when a team member is released for performance reasons, it really comes as no surprise to the other team members, because oftentimes they're picking up slack for someone who isn't pulling their own weight. So I think just, a quick conversation explaining, that this person isn't here anymore. Does anybody have any questions? And of course, those questions you're going to answer or not based on what they are, to respect whoever it was who is leaving. If it's a layoff, you're going to have a lot more questions to answer, because everyone is going to be afraid of, am I next? So you're going to have to be as straightforward as you can, depending on the situation, and reassure your team as much as you possibly can, depending on the situation.
Anybody else have any
This is an
thoughts here?
interesting-
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say this is an interesting question, because I don't think we talk about this enough, right? Of even just the communication piece. What does a manager do when someone from the team leaves? How do you move forward with the rest of your team? So I would be curious to see what other people think too.
To Alicia's point, I think, one of the first things is just a quick temperature check with the rest of your team. Are they surprised? How are they doing? And, consistently with the rest of ours, it just starts the conversation first. And being transparent and being there as a support for your team. I'm going to flip this a little bit. Now, let's say this team member had left of their own accord for another organization. How would that change your kind of first step in supporting your team there?
So the additional is that they just left, they voluntarily left to move to another organization. Is that the scenario?
Yes.
Okay. Just basically, what we've already stated is just, make sure that your team feels supported, make sure that, you speak with anybody that, is feeling, a little any kind of way right now about this person leaving. Many times, as we probably all know, usually when that is the case, the person has already told them and they know it. And just depending on, the circumstances, if this was just an outstanding opportunity for somebody, there's really nothing to do. But if it was for the reasons of they were dissatisfied with our company, then maybe we need to, if we did an exit interview, we need to walk through with the team to see if anybody else is having the same issues or concerns, and then address those issues and concerns to make sure that, we fix whatever problem that it could have been.
I think too that there's really nothing wrong with celebrating that person and everything that they contributed to their team. Saying, wow, we are really happy for you that you grew with us so much that this other opportunity came to you and you're going to be able to grow even more. I think that sets a great example for your team, that you're not wishing anyone ill just because they found a new challenge to take.
I agree with Alicia. I think I can recall many celebrations over the years of individuals that left for all the right reasons, and that's a conversation I have when people resign. I try to make sure they're running to and not running from, because often in that conversation I've been able to retain some folks over the years. But we certainly celebrate them as a team. But there's certainly an impact left with your group. They're interested in knowing if that vacancy is going to be filled, and maybe how soon you think that might happen. My team's always been great about being patient enough to want to know that you're going to hire the right person and not just fill the seat quickly. But then it has an impact on workflow. And so how will that be reallocated? Those are questions to be answered there. But more times than not, it's been a positive and not a negative experience if someone is running to and not running from.
Awesome. I don't have much else to add there. Those are all really strong answers and covered a lot of ground, and definitely, showed all that goes into when somebody leaves, why are they leaving? How will that impact the conversation? And making sure that we're, again, kind of treating our staff as people, that they have lives and that they want to grow, and making sure that we're celebrating that so that it carries back into the team that you do have. Excellent. So just to kind of summarize what we heard a lot of for those scenarios, I have just kind of 3 pieces here. The first 2 are pretty similar, but first, just coming in with curiosity. We're never going to know someone's experience and their perception of that experience until we ask. So instead of just assuming, making sure that we're starting with that check-in and just opening the door. The other piece too is keeping judgment out of it. People care about different things. And so making sure that we seek to understand what's important and how we can help. In all of those scenarios, it was important that we understood where that person was coming from and really understanding those motivators and demotivators and how we can help. And then the last piece, and again, this kind of ties into that servant leadership and just making sure that we are taking care of our team in the way that is going to be most suitable for them. What does your team need and how can you help? So really just no matter what's going on, making sure that we're up to date on those current strengths and barriers to success so that we're able to deliver the most appropriate feedback there. To finish up, just a reminder of what you have available to you in Truvella. So evaluations can certainly help you stay up to date on that employee performance. It's definitely a good kind of just gut check if there's a dip. So that way we know when it's time to check in, see what's driving that change. We can use Spark to show that you care about your team and their experience. We talked about the recognition a little bit today. So making sure that we're recognizing our team when they are going above and beyond, and using Spark to kind of follow up on any of those growth opportunities that we've talked about. It's also a great way to just keep the door open. So if you use Spark to document your check-ins, making sure that the employee has the opportunity to respond with any progress or questions that they might have. One other piece too is the survey function. So in that last one too, we started to talk about if somebody left and they were running from versus running to, making sure that we're able to check in and get honest answers from the team. So we could always run an engagement survey right away if we start to see some disengagement coming up, really understanding what's driving that disengagement there. And then lastly, the Knowledge Center has a lot of guides and worksheets that we can use to open up the conversation. So maybe this team member hasn't quite built that trust. Maybe they haven't quite gotten comfortable talking face-to-face yet. You can definitely use those IDP guides or meaningful check-in guides as just a way to open up the conversation. So helping that employee get comfortable. Sometimes if people have something written down ahead of time, they're going to be more comfortable talking about it. So just know that those resources are there. Should you choose to check them out. Before I move on, does anybody have any last questions or anything else they'd like to share? And Meryl just tossed in the chat the IDP guides. Well, with that, I just want to say thank you. We had excellent participation today, so I appreciate you all, sharing your best practices and how you would approach these different scenarios. And Carolyn, did this help to kind of clear up your original question around what does that holistic support actually look like?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Well, next month, we're going to be continuing our series around creative ways to engage your team. We're going to be getting into manager as coach. So really getting into different ways that you can deliver constructive and coaching feedback and really driving your team's development. So we'll have a few scenarios there, but hope to see you all again next month.
Thank you.
Thanks, Juliana.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye,
you,
everybody.
Anna.